Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Emmett Dempsey with Treasure Coast Mortgage here in Port Saint Lucie. Today we're going to talk about closing costs, who pays them, buyer or seller. The short answer is everyone pays closing costs, whether you're a happy buyer.
What do you mean you bought this house?
I made a bid online. I won the auction the next day and I got approval. I just finalized the paperwork.
And was the Blair Witch easy to deal with, or did she haggle over the closing costs?
Or an unexpected seller.
Once I sell this place, you can come live with me.
But why would I have to? I mean, I want to get a lot of money from the sale?
Oh, please, Charlie had 3 mortgages on this place. Once we deduct closing costs and escrow fees and my commission, you'll be lucky to break even.
Wait a minute, you're planning to take a commission?
She doesn't work for free. Why should I?
Wow, good job, Charlie. 3 mortgages, right? But yeah, so basically short answer is it's going to be both buyer and seller. Now, it all depends on what kind of transaction it is. Today, we're going to talk about what closing costs are, look at a few different ways that buyers and sellers pay closing costs, and also talk a little bit about builders. So first of all, what are closing costs? Closing costs are necessary third-party charges to settle the transaction of ownership of a property from one person to another. And today we're talking about if you are getting a mortgage, because I'm a mortgage broker. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about if you're buying a Florida house. So let's go ahead and take a look at exactly who pays what. And here we go. All right, so first of all, we have our lender fees, usually points origination, things of that nature. Should you so choose to do that, that's where it'll be in box A. Now, I go over this in my loan estimate video. If you go ahead and check it out right here, that's kind of we can go into detail how all these fees flow onto a loan estimate, so you can kind of see that that's your disclosure document for all your fees. So here the appraisal. Now POC means paid outside of closing. Okay, so that means you can put on a credit card. Runs you about $500. It's for about 99% of the transactions. It's required. Lately, I've been getting a few appraisal waivers. So you have to run your findings and see. But most of the time, you're going to need an appraisal. Now, the inspection is highly recommended. It's technically not required, but it's really inspectors really get the nooks and crannies of the house and see about any kind of systematic failure. Also, part of that. Of the inspection is your insurance inspections, like your wind mitigation, your 4-point, depending on how old the home is, in order to quote your insurance properly. All right. Next is your title insurance fees. So that's going to be like your just settlement charge, your lender's title insurance, as well as your endorsements to make sure, and also your survey, the boundaries of the property that you're buying. So that's all required to make sure that what is a piece of property you're buying here, what are the boundaries of that piece of property you're buying. Kind of common sense stuff, but they have to put that in legal terms, and that's what title insurance does. Okay, your recording, so all your mortgages and your deed get recorded in the public records. So that's what the recording fees charge, and the government gets their money. The next are transfer taxes. Now, in the state of Florida, there's no state income tax, which is awesome, but they get the money through real estate transactions. Now, these transfer taxes are based off the loan amount, 20 cents per thousand and 35 cents per thousand that you as a buyer are responsible for. Prepaids. That is your homeowner's insurance. You pay your 12 months of insurance up front, and then your escrow goes to pay the next year. Okay. Sometimes you have to pay like the first quarter of HOA if you're buying a home in an HOA. That's what a prepaid is. And of course, your escrows, should you choose to escrow. Personally, I don't escrow, but it's really a choice if you like just making that one payment and being done, or if you want to manage your cash flow, you can waive your escrows. Okay, let's talk about what seller would typically pay on arm's length transaction. Okay, seller, of course, the mortgage payoff. Or if you're Charlie, you have 3 mortgage payoffs. So there's that. Real estate commission. Again, she's going to get her commission. Typical 3% on both sides, to the buyer side and seller side. That's what usually happens. Of course, that's negotiable between each seller and the real estate agent. Okay, seller concessions. So sometimes buyers need help in order to buy. FHA can go up to 6% of the sales price, and then conventional, depending on the loan to value, right around 3% or so. So the seller concessions comes out of their net proceeds. Now there are also transfer taxes for the seller too. They're deed stamps. It's 70 cents per thousand of the sales price. So it's based off the purchase price, not the loan amount. Okay, so there's that. Now the owner's title policy, and usually it's a seller pay title, and then they will pick the title company. And then if you get an owner's title policy, your lender's title is discounted. So it's all around. Again, it's your owner's title policy, protects your entire investment of the purchase price. And then any other legal items like back HOA dues or anything that a seller owns in order to transfer a clean title to you in order to settle out. Okay, so that's basically what happens on a typical arm's length, buyers and sellers. This is a typical, we call a FAR contract. That's boilerplate. And a lot of these are negotiable. Sometimes the buyer will pay the owner's title policy, and that's a choice on the contract. This is typical what most routine arm's length resales are. Now, again, here in Florida, we have a lot of builders. So let's talk about builders. Basically. I have a lot of strong opinions, and look, new homes are nice, but the builders play dirty, So, and I don't think they have the consumer's best interest in mind. They're bidding up on land, and the way sticking to the closing cost conversation, all these items that are typical seller side, they move those seller sides to the buyer side, except for the commission, the mortgage payoff, like the seller concessions. Or like the deed stamps and owner's title policy, they'll move it over to the buyer side. So you pay all the closing costs. I'm going to give you a credit or incentive in order to use that builder. They usually steer you to their lender, steer you to their title company, and they've won case law. Because they're typical. The builders are sellers. They're not service providers like a realtor or lender, so they can kind of get away with it, and it sucks. But some builders, they'll allow you to use a lender. It's really builder specific, so shop around. Many of your bigger builders will always have their in-house lenders, and they're not always the best professionals, and they don't always have the best rates. Because, you guys understand that nothing's for free. So all those incentives have to come from somewhere. So if it's a wholly owned lender, basically they're going to make it up for it in the interest rate. So so sometimes we counsel our clients that, hey, get the highest interest rate and we can refinance right after, and some builders have really nice incentives that I just can't compete. Usually we'll look at side by side. I have worked with some builders, but just keep that in mind when you do build. I understand. Just be clear of your choices and what all the numbers are. It's like, if I went with this builder, here's what it would be, and if you can go to the builder, fine. Just make sure you're fully informed. So, well, that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as the closing costs, who pays, buyers and sellers. Typically they both pay, and here we went over what they do pay. If you have if you're looking to buy a house or refinance, definitely give me a call at DempseyMortgage.com. Here's a few videos right here that talks more about closing costs or in the loan estimate as well. I'll thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.